So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the main activity adapter. We're going to kind of talk about how we can handle recycler views with multiple kinds of views inside of them. So it's a really cool, powerful technique here. I do want to point out that there was a bug in the last video. I forgot a hash on one of my colors, one of my hex colors. So let's fix that really fast. The problem is in my base activity, you guys actually probably already noticed this, so you guys are probably good. For me though, I have to make sure that I go ahead and add that in. And then just to be on the safe side, I'm going to hit play. I guess also I can show you what it looks like so far. And it's really, I guess I can just show you how the swipe refresh looks. So watch how I can pull down, and then we see it pulls down, it sits there, and it goes away. Now, obviously, there aren't any, nothing's displaying yet because we haven't implemented our adapter, but you can see that the swipe to refresh does work, and it does stick around for a second, which means that the service calls are actually working. But enough of that. Let's go ahead and talk about the main activity adapter. So, how do we support multiple view types in a recycler view? Now, it's interesting because this is very similar, or if not almost identical, to how you would do this inside of a list view. And it is a bit of a challenge, unfortunately. It's a non-trivial thing, and I fully expect people to write their own wrappers around adapters to make this easier for their own purposes. But in this particular instance, because I want to show you guys how this kind of works under the hood, we'll go ahead and write this adapter to just support these three view types: the header, a message, and a contact request. Now, before I go on and talk about how we do this, I want to define a couple constants that we're going to be needing later. I'll explain what they mean when we write the first method, but just bear with me for a second here. I'm going to do a private static final int view type message equals 1, private static final int view type contact request equals 2, and private static final int view type header equals 3. Now, what these are and what they do will become very apparent when I talk about the next method we'll be implementing. The next method we'll be implementing actually isn't one of these three methods that are required by the recycler view. It turns out that there's another method that we have to override that's optional, because it's only used when you have different view types. So let's go ahead and do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Alt Insert, and I'm going to do Overriding Members, and I'm going to grab the Get Item View Type. So Get Item View Type right there. Now this is the most important method for supporting multiple types. Its sole responsibility is to accept a position and return an arbitrary integer. Now that arbitrary integer is what view type this current item has. And this is used in the recycler view to know how to recycle views. Let's say we have, so you guys know how the recycler view, its whole purpose is it takes a view that you have, it'll inflate it, and then it'll hand it back to you while you're scrolling, so that you only have X amount of views instantiated at a given time. That's why it's called the recycler view. But obviously, if we have a message view and we try to send it into something that's expecting to populate a header, you would run into a problem that they're not compatible view types. So the item view type is how it goes about actually knowing what items to recycle. And you'll also notice that, for example, the onCreate view holder gets an int view type as a parameter. So that's really cool. So you can kind of see that on the onCreate view holder, we can determine which view holder to create based off the view type. And the view type comes from the get item view type here. So how are we going to implement this? Because it's not just a matter of choosing between a contact request and a message, because we also have the headers to worry about. And the headers, I want to be shown and hidden if there are or are not items in that element. So this logic is very, very important. It's also very important to have it be relatively performant. It's really important you don't do anything super crazy here as far as performance goes, because unlike the onCreate view holder method, this method is going to be invoked a lot. So make sure that you keep things relatively snappy, a couple of arithmetic operations. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to write out the logic. So I'm going to say if contact requests dot size is greater than 0. So if we have contact requests, then I'm going to say if position is 0, return view type header. Right? So let's say I'm going to write a comment out here so you guys can see where I'm going with this. So we have our header view, which is displaying incoming contact requests, and that's one item in our list view. And then we have a contact request from user 1, and then we have a bunch of other from user 2 and 3 and 4, and then we have another header for another list item, which is messages. And then we might have a message 1, 2, 3, 4. And now all of these items need a position inside of the recycler view for it to understand it. So this will be position 2, or 0, sorry. I don't know how I got 2 out of 0. And these will be each subsequent thing. So we have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So how do I know which view type to return? So you can see here, if we have contact requests, the first item is always going to be a header. So that's what I'm doing here. If our contact request size is greater than 0, return a header. And notice that if it's not 0, I just want to move on to the next block. But I'll go through a couple more examples after I write this code out a little bit. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say position minus minus. So I'm writing this code and I'm mutating this position parameter to kind of keep track of a pointer, I guess you could say. See, on this line of code right here, the pointer, quote unquote, is pointing at this, right? So 0 for the list view is right now the header, the first item. But then what I want to do is if we are now wanting to look at my contact requests, out of the contact request array, I got to move that pointer down a little bit so that this position will line up with my array. Because now what I can do is I can say if the position is smaller than contact request.size, then return view type contact request. Because that means that this pointer, when I subtracted 1 from it to account for the header, it's now, if it's still less than our contact request size, that means we must be pointing at a contact request, right? So let's say the position that was passed in here is for item 3, right? So our pointer is looking at that right there, and or it's for position 3, item 3. This is where things get confusing because we have 2 numbers to worry about. We have our number here, and we have our contact request ID, and we have our position in the recycler view. So let's say we're looking at this, and we see that we have contact requests. We then see that we're not pointing at 0, so we know it's not a header. So then we subtract an item, and now our position happens to line up with our contact request 3. So this is the 3rd contact request, but it's the 4th item. And that means we can just assume that it's a contact request if it's within that range. What happens if it's not within that range? Well, then we want to adjust our pointer a little bit further, but we want to adjust it by our contact request.size. Let's say we're wanting to get the second message, right? All the way over here. We need to adjust our pointer so that it'll line up with this array. And we do that by subtracting the contact request size from it. So now what I can do is I can say if messages.size is greater than 0. So do we have any messages? If we do, it's basically the same logic. If position is 0, return view type header. That means, see, the cool thing about the way I'm writing this code is that this block will work whether or not there are any incoming contact requests. Because if there are incoming contact requests, our position is already going to be adjusted to be effectively pointing right here at what would have been the header. But if there aren't any contacts requests, then the code that actually runs and mutates the position is never ran, and the 0th element, or first element, is still pointing at that header. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. Anyway, so now what I can do is basically the same thing. If the position is not equal 0, adjust our pointer by a little bit, and then say if position is smaller than messages.size, return view type message. Otherwise, I'm going to say position minus equals contact request dot size. Now, why am I doing this here? We don't have any more types of things besides messages and contact requests and headers. Why am I adjusting this pointer a little bit? The reason is just for code cleanliness and sort of balancing things out a little bit and making it easy to extend this method, because now if I have a different type of thing that I wanted to add after messages, a different group of different type of elements, then I could just start off right from here without having to worry about my position. Now, yes, IntelliJ is going to tell me that I don't use this value that I mutated and the code is unnecessary, but I'm just justifying why I'm ignoring that particular warning. In fact, I can codify the fact that I'm ignoring this warning by hitting Alt-Enter, hitting the right arrow key, and say suppress for method. So I'm going to suppress the warning unused assignment on this entire method by introducing that annotation at the top. Okay, so what if we get to the end here? What if we don't have any contact requests and we don't have any messages? What would that mean? That would mean we have an error. That would mean that the recycler view is asking us for an item view type of a position that doesn't match up with either of our arrays of objects, which is obviously a programmer error. Either there's a bug in recycler view or there's a bug in our code. Most likely a bug in our code. But that's why you use exceptions like this. In fact, we could write a little message to ourselves here specifying and making it clear to us in the future if this code ever executes what went wrong. So basically, being asked for an item type from position, though we have no such item. So something like that. Anyway, it's good to throw exceptions if this code should never, ever, ever, ever run. It's better to catch a bug early than to let there be undefined behavior. But anyway, so that's that. Like I said, this is the most important method of this class, and it's also the most mind-bending, because I already had trouble explaining how this whole thing works, where we have these two sets of numbers. We have the item in the recycler view, but we also have the item as it relates to our individual arrays. I think this solution, this code, I think I'm rather happy with it. I'm happy with its symmetry, and I'm happy with its potential for extensibility. But anyway, that's our getItemView type. So now that we're specifying different view types, how do we use it? Well, the first place that you would be concerning yourself with is going to be the onCreateViewHolder. Now for this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to write some if statements. So I'll just go ahead and say if view type. Now remember, view type is what's returned by the getItemView type. If view type is a view type message, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say final message viewholder equals new message viewholder. Now remember, this one takes a view, not an inflator, so I do have to go ahead and say inflator.inflate, passing in r.layout.list item message parent and false. Of course, I have to hit Alt-Enter to import my R. And then I'm going to say viewholder.itemView viewholder.getBackgroundView .setOnClickListener new onClickListener, and then change that because that irritates me. And then I'm going to say listener.onMessageClicked cast to message view.getTag. Pretty straightforward, basically the same code that we had inside of our other message adapter that we wrote for the recycler view. So now that we have that, let's go ahead and return it. So return viewholder. All right, so next up, I'm going to do basically the same thing. Else if view type is view type contact request, then I'm going to say final contact request viewholder equals new contact request viewholder. Now this one inflates itself, so we just have to pass in our inflator and the corresponding parent. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say viewholder. In this case, I'm going to say itemView.setOnClickListener new onClickListener. Change this to view, and then I'm going to say, let's see here. I'm going to say contact request equals cast to contact request viewholder.itemView.getTag, and then I'm going to say listener dot on contact request clicked, passing in the request, and I'm also going to pass in contact requests dot index of request. Now, yes, I am using a linear search to get that, but the contact request will likely not be it'll not be large enough for there to be a performance issue with using a linear search to get its index. So I'm just going to keep things simple for this. Then we'll go ahead and we'll return view holder. Always remember to return the view holder here, because that's very important. Finally, we have else if view type is header. How do we return our header? Simply, since we don't have a click handler to deal with, this can be even easier. Return new header view holder and inflator parent. And that's it. The final thing I want to do is at the end, throw a new illegal argument exception saying view type is not supported. So another instance of us doing an early exit here, an early fail fast here, in the case that there's a bug in our code somewhere, because this should never happen. All right, so let's go ahead and do our onBind view holder. This is going to be a bit of a pain because we have to account for the fact that this position isn't a position within one of our arrays, but a position within our whole hierarchy. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say if holder instance of message view holder, or let's do a contact request first. Let's do contact request view holder. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say position minus minus to adjust the position away from the header that shows up. And then I'm going to say contact request equals contact request get position. And then we'll do holder dot item view set tag request, and we'll do holder dot populate activity request. Now you see that it actually did do a cast for me there. It casted it into a contact request view holder, which is exactly what you need to have this code work. It did it automatically. That was really cool. All I had to do was type in holder.populate and hit enter, and then it just magically knew that that was what I wanted. Probably inferring from the fact that I already am covered in a if instance of there. Next up, I'll do else if holder instance of message view holder. And if we're in a message view holder, we first need to adjust our position. So I'm going to subtract 1 for the header, but then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say else if contact request dot size is greater than 0. So if we have contact requests that are sitting before our messages, we have to adjust our position further. So I'm going to say position equals position minus 1 minus contact requests dot size. I'm not going to use a position plus equals or position minus equals here, even though I certainly could, because I find it really confusing when you do a position minus equals, but then you have 2 operands on the other side that you have to combine through addition. Otherwise, yeah, it's because of the order of operations. Because otherwise I'd have to do this, position minus equals 1 plus contact request dot size, because of the order of operations, and that looks really weird. I don't like it at all. I don't know. It's a style thing. So anyway, now that we have our position properly adjusted, I can say message equals messages get position, and then I can go ahead and say holder dot item view set tag. Well, whoops, we don't even need to do that. We need to do holder dot get background view, which I am going to go ahead and alias this view holder out into a message view holder. Bear with me for a second. Message view holder equals cast to message view holder. View holder, or just holder, I guess the name of that parameter. Then I'm going to say view holder dot background set tag to message, and then I'm going to say view holder dot populate activity and message. All right. Finally, I'm going to say if holder instance of header view holder. Now, how would we do this? Basically, it's actually really easy. I'm going to alias it out first into a header view holder. So I'm going to say view holder equals cast to header view holder. No, come on. Holder. And then I'm going to go ahead and say if the position is 0 and the contact request dot size is greater than 0, then viewHolder dot populate received contact requests. Otherwise, viewHolder populate received messages. So pretty straightforward. All we need to do is see if the position is 0 and we have contact request. That means we must be looking at the received contact request header, and we'll set its text to that. Otherwise, that means we're looking at the received messages header. All right, and then finally at the end, I'm going to do an else, a final else, and I'm going to say throw new argument exception. And I'm going to say cannot populate holder of type, and I'm going to pass in holder.getClass.getName. So, yeah. Now the last thing we need to do is our item count. So how do we calculate our item count? Well, pretty straightforward. I'm going to start off with int count equals 0. I'm going to say if we have contact requests, so if contact request size is greater than 0, then count plus equals 1 plus contact request size, right? Because if we have contact requests, we need all of our contact requests plus the header. And then I'm going to say if messages size is greater than 0, then count plus equals 1 plus messages size. Then finally, I'm going to return count. And that's it. That is our main activity adapter. I mean, yeah, it is a little scary because you really have to think in terms of these weird things, like because the position, the items, it's all just different. But once you get your head around it, you can write this kind of code fairly effectively, or you could just use a library that supports, makes this stuff working with this stuff a whole lot easier, or write your own. I would recommend that as a really excellent exercise for people. Anyway, as you see, we now have our received contact requests, which we can click on, and we have our received messages. All right, the last thing I want to do in this video is, now that we've talked about how recycler views work with the item positions, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and make this code work with our grid layout manager. Now, why would a grid layout manager be a problem? Because remember how we created a grid layout manager for our received messages or our sent messages for tablets only? Now, why would it be any more difficult to do with this particular example? Well, I'll show you guys. If I could select the right device, I would show you guys. So let's pop open our Nexus 7 here. So this is our awesome little tablet. And let's go ahead and log in, I guess. Oh, right. I haven't actually set up the grid layout manager yet. My bad. Let's jump into main activity first and actually set that code up. So here at the top of onYura create, on the line of code that we have recycler view.setLayoutManager, I'm going to say if is tablet, do this, and then I'll wrap this guy in an else. If it's a tablet, I'm going to say grid layout manager equals new grid layout manager, and I'm going to pass in this as the context and 2 as the span count, and then I'm going to say recycler view dot set layout manager manager. Now imagine what you think the problem might be with what I just did. Or just cheat and run it yourself, or just wait and I'll show it once Oh, you're right there. Derp. Okay. You see the problem? Our headers are being treated as if they were items, which means they are not spanning across the row, which is just really looks bad. What we want to have happen is we want these headers to span the entire row. So we can do that by actually doing some modification on the grid layout manager. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say manager dot set span size lookup, and I'm going to say new span size lookup and hit enter. Now what this has is this is anonymous inner type, and it has one method on it, get span size into position, and that's simply responsible for returning how many columns, what the call span is of a particular item at a particular position. So what I need to do here is I'm just going to make some assumptions. I'm going to say if position equals 0, it's always a header. So I'm going to return 2. Otherwise, if our contact request.size is greater than 0 and the position equals our contact request size plus 1, then return 2. That means that this is the messages header if we had contact requests. Otherwise, return the default of 1. So if you want to take a look at that code, go ahead and pause the video. Otherwise, I'm just going to go ahead and hit play here, show you guys how that shows up. So yeah, it's really simple code to make that fixed, but you really have to understand the positioning before you can write that code. But once you get the positioning, you can now have properly col-spanned headers. So yeah, that's basically what I wanted for my main activity as far as its layout goes. Now we still need some functionality that we're going to write here pretty shortly in the next video, but for now we have it displaying all the information that I wanted to display. And I guess also just for testing, I'm going to go ahead and enable the dummy webcam real fast. And I'm going to hit the take picture button, and as you see, it jumps all the way into our new message activity. And I can hit back, and I get back to my main activity. All right, I think that's just about wraps up what I wanted to do in this video, and we'll see you guys in the next one.